Man, it is only January 6th, and we're already starting off with a banger. What is going on, everybody? Today we are going to be discussing a trainer that I personally have been overlooking, and I'm sorry, Saucony, I was not familiar with your game, especially after the Saucony Triumph 22. And this shoe that we're talking about is the Saucony Ride 18, which is actually Saucony's regular, everyday, daily trainer, maybe a little bit more on the premium side, but it fits in line with the $140 price point of kind of the standard of everyone else's daily trainer. So it's a non-plated, regular, kind of regular stack shoe nowadays, which, let's be honest, these days is pretty damn high. But let's get right into the Saucony Ride 18. I've put about 8 miles on the shoe. I'm calling this a first run review, but I've really ran 3 runs in these, kind of shorter runs. I am preparing for a long run in this shoe tomorrow, so that's going to be more included in the full length or full review of this shoe. So let me tell you the reasons why I was surprised with the Saucony Ride 18. Let's get right into it. So starting out with the outsole, as always, we are going to talk about that XT900 or 900 XT? XT900 rubber outsole. And I don't really have too much to say about the outsole. I ran in mostly dry weather conditions. There was one run in particular where it was a little bit damp on the ground, but I would say the outsole held up pretty well. I would say average compared to the rest of the daily trainer market. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I wouldn't say it's below average either, but it stuck very well to the road pavement while in dry weather conditions, as most running shoes should. And when it was a little bit wet, that's when it got a little bit sketchy, but I didn't end up slipping. So that might say something about the rubber used on the outsole. But we're going to fully test it, put some more miles on the shoe, and we'll see how the outsole holds up then. I'm not even going to talk about durability. I've only put 8 miles on the shoe, but outsole seems good to go after 8 miles. I do want to also note that Saucony is known for their durability when it comes to their outsoles and just shoes in general. I've seen a lot of people run in the Triumph line for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, maybe only rivaled by the Super Blast in durability. So I have a good feeling that these should last a while, but again, I've only ran 8 miles in the shoe, so I'm not going to say anything about the durability of the outsole. Now, moving on to the thing that surprised me the most about the Saucony Ride 18. So I was intrigued on this model. I have tried on the Saucony Ride 17s. And I don't know what was going on that day, but apparently these have the same midsole and insole setup, keynote insole setup, as the Ride 17s, but I did try the Ride 17s a couple months ago, or maybe it was almost damn near a year ago now, and I was not impressed in the store. So the differences between that shoe and this shoe I felt were really drastic. I haven't ran in the Saucony Ride 17, I do want to note, just because on initial try on in the store, the Ride 17 was just so uncomfortable, if I'm being completely honest. So I felt that the midsole in the store of the Ride 17 felt really dead. It literally, I think, has the same setup and same tooling, so it looks exactly the same. And I believe that it also has the Power Run Plus insole that this one has, which I'll talk more about in a sec. But yeah, just long story short, the Ride 17 did not feel good. In the midsole, it felt really firm, really dead, kind of like the Saucony Triumph 22, if I'm being completely honest. That was in store, and also the upper, I wanted to note too, on the Ride 17, just felt a little bit plasticky. It didn't really feel like it fit my foot very well, and overall, I just wasn't excited to test the Ride 17. So when the Ride 18 came out, I kind of saw that there was a slight redesign on the upper, but I thought that the midsole would be the same. But I was like, you know what? We're going to gamble a little bit. I like the look of the Ride 18s. Let me just cop them. And boy, was I surprised. And the reason for that being is on initial try on, I felt that the midsole felt a little bit more comfortable than I remember the Ride 17 being. And I guess I walked around and then I also went on my first run. I think the first run was around like 2 or 3 miles. It was nothing crazy, but it kind of like blew my mind a little bit because I felt that the midsole of this Power Run Plus was just a little bit softer. It was a little bit more bouncy. It was a little bit more comfortable than what I felt in the Ride 17, which is what surprised me so much. So I was like, oh, maybe that's just like a one run fluke. And then I ran again, really short one. I tried to squeeze one in before golf, and I think I ran like 1 mile. But again, I felt that nice underfoot feeling of like, wow, like this is pretty comfortable. And then I ran yesterday a 5 mile run, and I ran different paces as well. I tried to pick up the pace, and that's when the shoe kind of came alive, is when I actually dropped from marathon pace to half marathon pace, even to maybe 10K pace, which for me was around a 7:30 for my mile 5 or my last mile of my last run in the shoe. And the shoe was performing extremely well, and I felt like I got into a groove with this midsole. It felt really bouncy, responsive, impact absorbent, firm and stable, and just everything that I was not expecting from this shoe. So I know that this is kind of premature, and I'm going to put in more miles on the shoe, but that Power Run Plus midsole, 35 millimeters in the heel, dropping to 27 in the forefoot, 8 millimeter heel to toe drop, exact same setup as last year's, which is what's so crazy to me. Maybe like I don't know, I tried on a defective pair of the 17s, but if the 17s felt like this and they're on sale right now, but yeah, I mean, the upper is a little bit different in the 18, so we'll talk about that. But the reason I say insole and midsole combo, I typically don't look at insoles just because I feel like they're embedded with the cushioning, and I don't know, insoles don't make a huge difference to me. But in this case, I had to kind of look at it because I felt that it was so different than the 17. But apparently the 17 has the same insole, but it is a Power Run Plus Saucony insole, which I think makes the world of difference. If I remember correctly, the Triumph 22 just had a regular like ortholite insole and not actual cushioned insole like this one. And this is just so freaking comfortable. I haven't tried on the shoe without the insole to see if like the setup is firm without the insole, but just this insole with this midsole combination, I think for a heavier guy like me, I'm around 205, 210 right now, and it's just super, super comfortable, and it stays bouncy or a touch bouncy, but also still firm so that it's really stable, and then you also get the impact absorption too. So it feels like it's a TPU blend, which I think Power Run Plus is. So you get a little bit more of that rigidity and bounce in the midsole while still being pretty solid and stable. The one thing I will say about this midsole, just from initial try on, is that I do feel like it is a little bit clunky of a setup. The midsole does feel a lot heavier than the upper, which I can't really fault Saucony for because this upper is super lightweight, super breathable, which we'll talk about in a sec. I know I keep saying I'm going to talk about the upper, but the midsole does feel a little bit clunky because the midsole is so much heavier than the upper. And I do feel that it is a pretty chunky out like midsole. I wish that they cut out a little bit maybe in the heel or split this heel in the back just so that the transitions felt a little bit smoother or less clunky. But I think for bigger runners like myself, I think that this is going to be a very durable midsole. It's going to be a comfortable midsole. It's also going to help you run a little bit faster if you want to, but also still be versatile enough to handle those slower paces. So overall, from a first impression standpoint, this midsole I think is going to be a winner in my book. So that's, I guess, my long spiel about the midsole, but I was thoroughly impressed, as you can tell, with the Saucony Ride 18's midsole. One thing I did want to note too is that for wide footers, I do have a wider than average foot. I did go true to size in this shoe. My pinky toe was overflowing on the forefoot of the midsole, so as you can see, I mean, or maybe not really see, it kind of looks like an average width when it comes to a platform for the shoe. I do want to note that I don't know if it's the upper or the midsole, but I did feel my pinky kind of poke out, and I'll try to get the short that I made of this shoe. You can kind of see my pinky toe coming out of the shoe, and I feel that it's overflowing over the midsole, which could be my fault that I didn't get the wide version of the Ride 18, but so far it hasn't really affected me. I haven't gotten any blisters on my pinky toe. If anything, it's just like a discomfort initially, and then like once I tied the shoe tighter and I kept running in it, it still didn't really bother me too much. It's just something to note for sure when purchasing this shoe. So if you have a wider than average foot, take a look at the wide option because this shoe does run a little bit narrower, I would say, than a lot of the other shoes that have come out this past year. So just keep that in mind if you have a wider than average foot. So moving on to the upper, like I've talked about so much that I was going to talk about, this upper is very, very breathable. Typically, I don't care about breathability or ventilation in running shoes too much, but I felt that, in the past, the daily trainers that released, they kind of thought of ventilation as an afterthought. I didn't really care because I don't sweat too much, I guess, with my feet. But this one in particular felt very breathable, which is really nice. It's kind of reminiscent of the New Balance Rebel V4. That was also one of the more breathable running shoes that I've worn. But when I was running in the shoe, the upper felt very lightweight, very breathable, felt the wind through my toes, which is actually kind of nice. It's like driving in a convertible versus like a hard top. So it was a nice change of pace to get a breathable upper in the shoe. like I said, it does run a little bit narrow from a platform point of view, but from, I guess, just like the upper point of view, I thought it ran true to size. If you do have a wider foot, consider the wide option, or hopefully try these on in store to see which one fits your foot better. Heel lockdown was phenomenal. I did have to break in the upper maybe for one run, and then I did end up doing the runner's loop. So I tied the forefoot pretty tight, and then I was able to get a nice lockdown in the forefoot. As I said, my pinky toe was a little bit overflowing. And then with the runner's loop, I had no problems with heel lockdown. So overall, the upper, I guess like if I did have one complaint of the upper, it did feel a little bit loose or just a little bit of volume in the forefoot. But as I tied the laces tighter and tighter, and as I'm breaking in the shoe, I'm getting a little bit used to it. But I do wish that there was maybe just a touch more structure and a little bit more of a snug feeling in the forefoot if I were to have a minor complaint on the Ride 18's upper. But other than that, I think that the upper did its job. Again, it could be my fault that I didn't get the right size. Maybe a size 12 wide would have been better for myself for the platform point of view, so my pinky toe wouldn't be overflowing. But then again, that also could backfire and I would have more space in the forefoot. So I think I'm okay with just the regular size 12, and we're just going to keep running in it and see if it breaks in for the full review. So overall, I will say that Saucony killed it with this shoe. I mean, it's just the first impressions. I want to reiterate that. I am going to put way more miles onto the shoe before I give you guys a full review. I'm going to do a long run tomorrow. I'm going to keep stacking up the miles, and hopefully around the 30 to 40 mile range, I will give you guys my full thoughts and my full review once this shoe is completely broken in. But I do feel like I have broken it in already. Again, talking about the midsole too, I do want to note I am a heavier runner, and typically when you are heavier and when you're putting a little bit more force into the shoe or the midsole, you are going to, I guess, unlock characteristics of the foam that maybe if you're a lighter runner, you wouldn't really feel. So I do want to note that maybe a lighter runner in this shoe won't really feel the bounce in the midsole as much as maybe I did, because when I was pushing the shoe pretty hard and when I was putting a lot of force underfoot, that's when I felt that little bit of responsiveness. So if you aren't as heavy, I would say that maybe you won't feel the response as much, but that's also me just kind of speculating and just kind of giving out a disclaimer. I don't want you guys to think that, oh, Jason said that the shoe's super bouncy, but when I put the shoe on, it feels kind of dead. I do want to note that I am heavier, and this shoe for me felt a little bit bouncier than the shoes I normally run in, and I think that that's because it's Saucony Power Run Plus, and Saucony's foams, in my opinion, just feel a little bit more bouncy, typically, not with the Triumph 22, but with this shoe, and also kind of like the super shoes that I have from Saucony, the foams are usually chef's kiss, really bouncy, really comfortable. And this one, you're getting the added benefit that since it is a little bit more dense and a little bit more on the firm side, it is still stable. So that's going to wrap up my first run review. I know that was a really lengthy first run review. It's technically first 3 runs in the shoe and 8 miles put on the shoe, but I am really enjoying this Saucony Ride 18, and I'm honestly, it's kind of surprising to me because, haven't had the best luck with Saucony's recent shoes, but this shoe kind of makes me excited to run in it. So I'm going to run a long run in the shoe, put more miles in the shoe, and I am excited to give you guys my final thoughts soon in the Saucony Ride 18. But this could be a sleeper that I have not really accounted for in my shoe calendar. So keep that in mind. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys really soon in the next video. Thanks for the support. See you in the next one. Peace.